Hello and welcome to Sisterhood with me, Shelly Chopra. I'm joined by Radhika Piramal. She's a corporate leader who I have been inspired by for years for many reasons, other than the fact that she runs VIP Industries with great energy and elan, but also that she came out in 2011 as an LGBTQ person. And at a time, corporate India was not even learning the ropes or what they should have known about same-sex relationships. So Radhika is an inspiration for many across genders for many issues, and how she comes out and talks in great simplicity and importance, brings importance to these many issues. Radhika, thanks for being with us here.
Oh, Shelly, thanks so much for this invitation. I'm excited to speak with you today.
Great. So let's just get down to the basics of things and make this, a bit of a primer for anyone who wants to come up to speed. What are same-sex marriages and why is there a demand for it?
Okay. So I am out and proud lesbian, part of the L in the LGBTQ plus community. And we are seeking for same-sex marriage equality, which means we want the right for our marriage to be legally recognized and protected under the law, the same way as if a man and a woman would get married. And it can become very complicated. There's a Supreme Court hearing going on, Special Marriage Act, Hindu Marriage Act. Let me try and make it really simple for everyone. There are basically three groups of countries in the world. There's one group where it is illegal to be part of the LGBT community or illegal to be homosexual. India was in this group until 2018 when the Supreme Court had a verdict where we decriminalized homosexuality. So that's great. So then India progressed from this first group to the second group where it's not criminal, but neither are there any legal protections or benefits. So I'll just explain what is a legal protection or benefit of marriage, because sometimes straight people take it for granted. There are the legal protections are partly financial, partly medical, and then there's a whole host of emotional benefits. But I'll start with the financial simply. So for example, opening a joint bank account, being able to rent a property together by co-signing a lease, being recognized as a relative under the Indian Income Tax Act, which means that you can then give money to each other, wife and wife, or husband and wife, or spouse and spouse, as we like to say, can give money to each other without tax-free as a gift. Something very basic. Probably, many couples obviously share money, homes, bank accounts, and they don't think twice. But I am not eligible for this in India because there's no such recognition of these laws in India. And then the third group of countries is where there is such recognition. So there are 35 countries in the world that have legalized same-sex marriage, and they've done it through either judicial court judgments or through the legislation and the parliament.
Yeah. To a listener and to somebody who's a fan of love, the question would be, if you can love without it being criminalized, then why not marry?
Yeah, exactly. It's the most natural thing. Like, of course, some people don't want to commit to a stable, permanent, lifelong relationship. But many people, I would argue, now who gets into statistics, but many people who fall in love then want to make a lifelong commitment. It's a natural progression to say, if I love you, I want to spend my life with you. Then I want to be able to call your parents mother-in-law and father-in-law. That's the definition of in-law. And we are not getting that opportunity right now. Actually, it's discrimination.
Yeah. So when you decided to come out, at that time, India wasn't even discussing this. Media coverage was perhaps very thin. What gave you the courage to come out and then, spend all these years rallying for change?
Actually, at the time, I don't know if I had courage because I did not come out. I was outed by the Mumbai Mirror. So the story is that I met my now wife, Amanda, in 2007, and we've been together since then. And in 2011, we had a civil union in London where it was legal at that time. Even in the UK, it moved from civil union to marriage. So we had a civil union. We invited hundreds of our friends and families. It was a very big step at the time. And my parents were concerned that this would come out in the media. In fact, they were right, because there was just a small blurb in Mumbai Mirror. Very VIP wedding in London. Radhika marries lady love in London. And, once I was out, it was pretty scary that day. But then it was the best thing that ever happened to me, Because then after that, there was no secrets at work, at VIP. Like when I went to work the next day or that same day of that publication, like the watchman was reading the Mumbai Mirror as I drove in, and then I went past the receptionist, and then my head of marketing came and said, Radhika, have you seen this story? I said, yeah, Manish, it's difficult to miss this story. He said, what should I reply to the PR agency? I said, just tell them it's the truth and no further comment. And then after some time, I thought to myself, why should there not be any further comment? Let me take charge of my own narrative and explain to people, like I'm doing now, what is LGBTQ? Why are we different a little bit, maybe from the majority heterosexual community? But even though we're different, we want to belong, we want acceptance, we want love, affection, respect. We want more than tolerance at this point. We want inclusion.
Yes. So let's actually unpack that. Like I was just asking you before we started, that in one of your recent articles, you say you're part of the LGBTQ community. And why not LGBTQIA plus community? And I'm just trying to say, ask this on behalf of many people who want to get this right. What all do we need to say? What all do we miss out, intentionally or unintentionally?
Just before I answer that technically, I would like to start by saying the basis is intention. So intention matters a lot in how you ask people or address people. So I don't think actually many members of the LGBT community, LGBTIA, I is intersex, A is asexual. We want to identify in the way we want to identify, and we want people to respect us, but we understand that it can be confusing, and we're okay explaining how we want to be addressed. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. I identify as lesbian, a woman who is attracted to another woman. And I'm almost 45, and I've known this about myself since the age of 15. So now 30 years.
Wow. So we were talking about being outed and the PR piece, which I imagine is a very central part, because the world needs to make space with intention. So as that happened, Radhika, for you, why did it become important for you to start talking much more in India? And I recognize that somewhere in the middle of 2014-15, you started having these conversations in a very public way in India. Perhaps India needed it at that point. I mean, imagine we're in 2023 and we're still not able to move the needle far enough.
Yeah, because the reason I started speaking out publicly was because it was the need of the hour. If there's silence, there's shame. And if there's openness, I think there's an opportunity for connection and understanding. And it's, the decriminalization or striking down of Section 377, those petitions were coming up, through the high courts and then the Supreme Court. In fact, there had been a major setback in that, in 2009, Delhi High Court said yes, and Supreme Court a few years later said no. And after that is when I thought, let me just go to press now, because I want to explain to people that if you have any respect for me as a person, human being, working woman, I have so many different identities, then you have to also respect me for being lesbian.
Yeah. Do you think that it's one thing that when one looks at this entire Supreme Court conversation and the desire to kind of push this to the legislature, is there a lot of work in terms of just not wanting to, what should I say? They're worried about optics more than really the core issue? Because I mean, I'm just thinking if they've, if 2018 was 2018 and, there's an acceptance of love, then it does seem like this is really about optics.
No, I cannot, and I don't want to comment on Supreme Court and their views, and let the lawyers do their work of figuring out judiciary legislation. I think my goal is just to bring a bit of visibility to this argument and explain that we might be different, but we are equal, and we don't deserve to be discriminated against, and our love deserves to be recognized, and our love is natural.
And so when you say that, when you said something earlier about PR, one of the things people really guard is public image. But public conversations, media coverage can be one of the cornerstones of how change gets rolled out in a country, right? How do you perceive that journey in the India
That
story?
that journey has actually been wonderful. So we have, when I keep saying we, by the way, I mean a very broad umbrella group of the entire LGBTIA plus community. And it's upon us to come out and give all our voices to the media, and not just for a few people to lead the conversation. So I've been talking out on this, but I welcome as many people as can who can talk about it. And we have actually got a, I'd say, pretty good press, at least a good presence in the Indian media. And today, Shaili, we have social media. Like, it is absurd to say that Indian public opinion cannot handle the idea of homosexuality, because we all get Netflix and Amazon Prime from all over the world, and there's so much LGBT representation, characters, plot lines, in Hollywood, in Europe, and even in Bollywood now. I mean, there have been a number of movies in the last decade. So, like, to just say that, the Indian public can't handle it, I don't even understand that.
Yeah. So as these conversations continue, and they will remain fairly mainstream, thankfully, what are the things that you feel our current generation and perhaps the newer ones, which are constantly at the flux of information from social media, what part do they need to get right as the core?
Yeah, I think they need to get right the importance of legal protection. I think there's a lot of visibility now. By the way, visibility in some areas, we can also get stuck in our echo chambers. And we're proud of the fact that there's a good media representation, but I want to say it's largely activists and lawyers, not that many corporate people like me, almost nobody from Bollywood, nobody in cricket. So there are leading areas where there is no, and that's true internationally. Okay, there's very few out, for example, Premier League football players in the UK. I think that's true. Yeah. So it is important to keep talking and to get more people in and just be more comfortable and open with the idea that this is not some strange thing. This is just part of society.
It's interesting that you refer to this, because sometimes the challenge lies in the fact that there isn't enough effort to normalize it, sometimes external, sometimes from within. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying good normalizing does help in in making things a lot more real.
And in fact, though, I will say there have been some great strides in the workplace on normalizing. So diversity and inclusion efforts in India have improved in the last 5 years. And this is not restricted to LGBT. This includes women. I mean, women, we are not a minority in the population, but we are absolutely a minority in the workforce. And sadly, India's rate of women participating in the formal workforce is declining, not increasing. And we are well below most major countries. I think we are like 20% or less than 20%. So it's a cause of concern that why don't women feel able to work? What about people with disabilities? What about people from the LGBT community? How can we protect them, or us, me, from bullying, harassment, discrimination in the workforce? So there has been more efforts on this by the many leading companies in India in policy and practice. It's a long way to go, but we started. And this can also change opinions over a period of time. In fact, some people of the LGBT community, they feel more psychologically safe at work than they do at home, because they can be out at work.
Yeah.
But they can't be out to maybe the extended family or the parents.
Yeah. The judgment is heavy within.
The judgment is heavy. It can be heavy. And the only way to change people is by sharing, for me, has been by sharing my story. And just, people actually have love, empathy, understanding if they're open to it. And a conversation goes a long way in helping.
I really like the fact that you said that the conversation goes a long way in helping. And the reason I like that is because I think even for women, until we started telling stories of what a new role model could look like, right? There was just absolutely no expectation of a woman leader who wouldn't necessarily be on the top of a magazine. Like I always say, you don't have to launch rocket ships to be a successful woman. And we need to kind of normalize that the more conversations we have, and the more stories and role models we showcase, the faster this space would be of change.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why it's important, for platforms like She the People. And we really appreciate, admire your work on showcasing women leaders in all the different diversity and fields, artistic, corporate, anything, like everything.
Yeah. There's something that I want to nudge you on, which is that often when people identify themselves publicly, whether through caste or gender or whatever, then they sort of end up being just that identity. And I think there is a way to potentially unpack this and notice that here we have, she is the boss at VIP Industries running the show. She knows her business, and there is her identity. And these two things normalize it much more at multiple levels. I think talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, some people don't like labels. I really understand that. Like, who wants to be labeled?
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with it. Like, I'm really comfortable identifying as a lesbian. And in part, it is because honestly, I never felt any internalized shame or self-homophobia when I realized I was lesbian. I mean, one fine day as a teenager, I've been thinking, and I realized, oh, I like women. I'm attracted to women, not men. And actually, the whole world fell into place for me then in my head. And then it was a long journey of telling other people and striving for acceptance. But I started with self-acceptance strongly. And I think that's why I'm not afraid of a label or not afraid to come out in the media. But some people feel that labels pigeonhole them, restrict them. And that's fine. I respect that opinion. For me, I think the visibility aspect is more important. And my friends, at least my friends and family, when they, or anyone who we know properly over a period of time, they never think, oh, Radhika the lesbian. They think Radhika my daughter, Radhika my aunt, Radhika my boss, Radhika my fellow board director. They think like that. Just like how, I don't know, if you've met anybody with a birthmark on their face, okay, maybe the first time you meet them, you notice it, but after 10 or 20 years of knowing them, you don't even notice it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I think the stereotypes sometimes just still don't go. I mean, to be honest.
We all have multiple identities. We really do, like as family members, as work, as professionals, as friends, as a hobby enthusiast of XYZ, whatever, passion we have outside of work. How can we restrict ourselves to one identity?
So Radhika, tell me.
But sorry, on that though, it's important that the identities don't clash, because that creates a lot of internal conflict. And then you can be people can get confused, conflicted, unhappy, insecure. So I think, obviously, look, all of us have multiple identities that overlap, and they should be sort of sync with each other and not have too much conflict.
So I was telling my 9-year-old boy about your journey and your story. And I'm just wondering, when you meet young kids, right? Your own family, in your own family, how does the connection come through? Because I'm guessing kids are so pure about even making assumptions, right? So there is no question of perhaps asking you to identify yourself in any way, not as a corporate leader necessarily, and certainly not with your, sexuality.
Yeah, definitely. Look, if you're the mom of a 9-year-old son, you know that firstly, we have to follow their conversation, right? Like they are not necessarily interested in everything we want to teach them. So there's no way I would lead a conversation about me and a kid starting with sexuality, because that's actually inappropriate. Rather, I talk about what I do and who I am as a person. But in the case of my sort of life with the young children, Amanda and I chose not to adopt, but I'm very close to my nephews who are now 12 and 15. And when I got married, they were 9 months and 3.5 years, and they both, my older sister, Radhika Piramal, she brought them for the wedding. So they've just grown up with Amanda Masi and Radhika Masi in their lives. If they've come and cooked pasta with me in my kitchen every Thursday night for the first decade of their life, and we cook together and we've taught them how to make pasta, because Amanda is American and a terrific cook, and she makes a killer mac and cheese. Then at which point in their life are they going to ask for an explanation of Radhika and Amanda Masi? They just see us as their Masis. Aparna's their mother's sister and sister-in-law. And we're just like mama and papa to them. We're this couple who live 20 minutes from where they live and who they enjoy the play dates. So we never had any long, serious conversation. So once I asked my sister, Aparna, what have you told them? And she said, I've just told them that you all are like mama and papa, and they've not asked me. And and it's flown from them. And they're kids now, 15-year-old on the internet. Come on.
Yeah, no, and I think that's really where the change lies, right? I mean, hopefully we would not have to have explanatory discussions and interviews a decade from now. Hopefully, I mean, you can't say that. I mean, we're sitting in 2020.
Listen, it's still very shocking for many members of the Indian public to think, how can a gay LGBT couple have children or adopt? And the truth is, it's absolutely fine. I mean, it is, and there are actually studies to prove. There's research studies that are published, very genuine, done by proper social scientists, that show that how a child is brought up depends on how those parents have brought them up with love, affection, trust, openness, not the gender or sexuality of the parents.
Yeah. So there's a question that I often ask people who give me the argument that, but but we don't get it, how can this happen? What is it? Why are we trying to do something unnatural? The terms that come. And here, this is the question that I always wonder, that how long are we willing to give an explanation to ignorance?
Great question. You said unnatural. Look, people who don't know anyone, who claim they don't know anybody LGBTQ, I just wonder how open they are about sexuality in general, and are they very sort of repressed, closed, because, we are anywhere between 5 to 10% of the population all over the world, across all cultures, all countries. So the answer of how to keep sort of addressing ignorance as long as it's needed. And, we think that some things, the conversation should be over, but it's not, right? Like, Shaili, you and I would prefer not to be talking about women's participation in the workforce in 2023. We would like that, but we have to. There's no choice.
Yeah. Except that I think one of the things that's changed, and we were talking about this earlier, is social media, and perhaps more public discourse on this. There are people who are talking, like yourself, writing as well. What can it take for people to pick up an article? Go do the Google search. I mean, what can it take, right? I mean, how long does one have to kind of keep going back and making this extra effort, which can sort of be led by initiative instead?
I mean, Shaili, you are the journalist and you're asking the question, so I'll turn it back on you. I think it's more than a lifetime of work ahead, but let us be proud of the progress made also, right, in the last 10 years. So let's keep our enthusiasm. At least I'm keeping my enthusiasm. I'm super excited. In the last 2 weeks, I never dreamed that the Supreme Court of India would hear a plea for marriage equality for LGBT people in my lifetime. I think it's an incredible opportunity. And I think if we, whatever that we is, it can be a minority community, it can be based on caste, sexuality, religion, anything. If we don't fight for our rights, nobody else will.
Right. Takes me to one question, which is that, I just came fresh from a conversation about the institution of marriage in the heterosexual connotation. And to me, there is some irony there that a large number of heterosexual couples are dying to not be stuck in the construct of marriage as we know it today, right? I mean, I get there's a legal part of it, but Indian marriages, people are hardly looking at the legal element in heterosexual relationships. And here we have this absolute passionate battle to get those lawful rights on hand. I wonder what that stacks up for you when you observe it around you.
I think everyone should have the right to choose, because I respect a heterosexual couple who does not want to fall into what they consider a patriarchal or heteronormative traditional institution, and they want to live as a live-in couple without legal benefits and protections, and they're willing to give those up because they don't agree with these cultural traditions of marriage. I have all the respect for every heterosexual couple who wants to do that. I'm saying the LGBT community should have the right to choose if they want to participate in this institution or not, because marriage is pretty fundamental in society. So not being allowed to marry is almost like not being allowed to go to school. Because if we say that in child's life, education is the most important thing, in an adult's life, getting married is a pretty fundamental step, right?
Yeah.
So we want the choice.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. Just one other question, which is that as more of these conversations emerge and help people become more knowledgeable about what the law says and what potentially it can do, what would be your your pitch to people who are just coming in fresh and saying, listen,
yeah,
hold my hand?
Well, firstly, I'll say, thank you for the viewers of She the People. Most of you must be heterosexual and straight, so thanks for listening. And if you please don't judge without learning. And when have a conversation with someone about the issue, the LGBT inclusion equality issue, and just give them a chance here without judgment. And I think you'll find us just the same as you in many ways.
Radhika, what is same-sex marriage?
Well, we all know what marriage is. And same-sex marriage is just a woman marrying a woman, a man marrying a man, or a transgender person marrying a man or a woman. It is two people of the same sex marrying each other.
So we have love is love, and this is basically homosexuality was decriminalized in India in 2018. And now we are fighting for marriage rights by law. Can you just unpack that for us?
All straight couples I know take it for granted, but actually getting married is a contract that the state will recognize, a contract between two people, a couple who have got together and are recognized under the law. And it gives them so many financial, medical benefits. For example, opening joint bank account or being able to talk to the doctor on behalf of your spouse. These are simple examples.
So are you saying that there are no rights available to your partner in a same-sex relationship today in India?
Absolutely. We are not recognized as a couple under the law. And that is basically, we are like a live-in couple, even though we've been together for more than a decade. So no registrar, property registrar will allow us to buy a property together. No bank, we cannot have joint bank account. I cannot nominate her on my DMAT account. These are issues.
Wow. So the world here today is debating whether marriage is an institution. I should specify this debate is among heterosexual couples, whether it's worth having marriage as an institution. Should one person be perhaps held to stay married to one person for the rest of their lives? And the other side of it is this passionate battle for having legitimacy. I wonder how you read into this. These two completely opposite situations.
I think all straight and gay people should have a choice as to whether they get married or not. So if there are a number of straight people who don't want to get married or who are in unhappy marriages and want a divorce, I salute them. But as a lesbian who has been with my long-term partner, who I want to live my whole life with, I want our union to be recognized under the law.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.